Welcome. My name's Steve Mart. Kelly, I don't know if I didn't hear the introduction if there was one, but I'm a partner with Ancel Glink, and previously was a city attorney for the town of Normal for a number of years and practiced municipal law for quite some time now. And we, as part of our practice at Ancel Glink, we represent all sorts of units of government, park districts, library districts, villages, municipalities, cities, and even some counties and townships, road districts, etc. With me today is Eugene Balotnikov, and he will be joining with the presentation. Eugene attended DePaul University and got his JD degree from Chicago Kent College. Eugene, you want to introduce yourself or tell us more about you?
I do. Thank you, Steve. Hi, I'm Eugene Blatnikov. I'm an associate at Ancel Glink. I previously spent almost 3 years at the Chicago Police Department, also doing municipal law. Here at Ancel Glink, I primarily concentrate my practice on advising clients about compliance issues related to the Illinois Freedom of Information Act, as well as assisting various units of local government with general transactional matters and advising clients on procedural and substantive legal issues regarding open meetings, employment, ethics, elections, land use, and other matters as well.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you.
I assume that you can see the parliamentary procedure screen on the PowerPoint. That's our introduction there. And let's move on to the next screen. Well, let's see if I can go back. What we'll be covering today, it's kind of a basics parliamentary procedure orientation, 101 type of a class. We'll look over the purpose of rules of procedure, some sources of rules of procedure, typical meeting formats, parliamentary terms, parliamentary procedures, and we'll also hopefully view a couple of audios from some governmental meetings that went awry or went amok, and hopefully you'll be able to see and hear those in the webinar. We also have, for your information, and I'll be flipping to them throughout the presentation, examples of county board rules. And I have pulled for today's presentation rules from Mclean County. If you go to their website, and it's probably true for your county as well, your county board has probably adopted rules of procedure governing how members are to conduct themselves and how business is to be transacted. Why have rules of procedure for a legislative body? The purpose of parliamentary procedure is to enable the assembly or the body to conduct its business in the most efficient way possible, while at the same time preserving and considering the rights of its members. Robert's Rules of Order are probably the most commonly used rules of procedure in the United States. These rules were organized and written by General Robert back in the 1800s. I think he got started on it around 1870, was his first attempts to assemble and publish rules of procedure. And one of the quotes that's often attributed to him describes the importance of having rules of procedure for a legislative body. particularly in a democracy. He's stated as saying, the great lesson for democracies to learn is for the majority to give to the minority a full, free opportunity to present their side of their case. And then for the minority, having failed to win a majority to their view, gracefully to submit and to recognize the action as that of the entire organization and cheerfully to assist in carrying it out until they can secure its repeal. So Robert recognized the importance of rules in order to not only make meetings efficient, but also to recognize and protect the rights of minority members or members who may have minority views today, with their right to present those views and have those views debated and discussed. I know there's a common saying about the Senate being the U.S. Senate being the great legislative body where great debates are held, but it seems that a lot of our governmental bodies at the federal and the state level have gotten away from, great debate, and it seems like a lot of activity is undertaken in committees or behind the scenes, and the debates where minority views are expressed perhaps aren't as common as they used to be. But I think it's important for all members to be able to present their views in the legislative body, and rules of procedure help protect that. The objectives of parliamentary procedure, one, if you have rules, hopefully the rules will help avoid confusion and promote efficiency. And this is done by focusing on one item at a time. Oftentimes, legislative bodies, particularly small groups, municipal village bodies, where there's only 7 or 10 members in attendance, they may easily get sidetracked on a number of items. But as the body gets larger, and county boards are larger than that typically, it's important to focus on one item at a time because this helps save time and avoids confusion. Having rules also promotes civility. Speakers are recognized before they speak, so that we don't have speakers speaking over one another. And everyone is allowed to speak at least once under standard rules of procedure if they desire to speak on a given topic. Rules of procedure also allow the majority to control the meeting through the majority vote process. Excuse me. As I indicated, minority rights are protected by allowing minority views to be presented and debated, but eventually it's the majority that will decide an issue and move the legislative assembly forward on any particular matter.
Steve, this is Kelly. Are you changing slides? We're not seeing that. We're still seeing your cover slide photo.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I've been changing slides.
Okay, it's not showing on our end.
Maybe I need to, you still see the very first slide?
Yeah, we're seeing a static of the very first slide versus the actual presentation.
People can see a paused version. Click to resume screen showing. Is that advancing?
Yeah, now you might try it a couple times, see if it. Yes, you're fine now. Thank you.
Okay, all right. At this point, I wanted to, and it's kind of an experiment here, but I wanted to play a YouTube video of a Detroit City Council meeting. This video is relatively short, and hopefully you can hear it. But it simply illustrates a situation where someone is speaking who has not been recognized by the chair and who does not have the floor.
Yeah, and I say that because I think that's important because, I mean, I could say it's my view that it's okay to murder somebody, but
Yes.
we all know that murder is against the law.
Yeah, no, this is based on
Oh, I did say
several.
based upon your
All due
experience,
respect,
right?
President Pro Tem, I have the floor.
I just wanted to say I said based
Well,
upon his experience.
well, you just jumped on another council member about interrupting, and
Sure
now you're
did.
doing it to
Attacked
me.
me, and I didn't
Did not
attack you.
attack you.
I have the floor.
We know you do, but I said based upon his years of
I have the
service.
floor, President
The
Pro
floor
Tem.
is out
I don't want to
there.
hear you anymore.
And you don't have to hear me. We don't have to hear you.
Then be quiet
No,
because
you
I'm
not
speaking
my
and I'm
daddy.
asking
You
a
do that at
question.
home, not here.
And not your
Okay?
father, but I am the
Exactly.
president,
So
and right
treat
now
me
I
with
have the
respect,
floor.
'cause I'm tired of that. Be respectful. Me, you may not do that at home, but you're gonna do it
Then
up in
stop
here.
interrupting.
You grow up. Control your house, and you know how to treat other women better.
You're the last one to talk.
I'm the
about that.
first one to talk,
Council
dude.
member.
Shrek.
Shrek.
You're out of
Shrek.
order.
The first one to talk. Don't
You're out of
disrespect
order.
me.
Order of the
If you-
day.
I will call this to adjourn if you don't.
Do
be
it,
silent.
baby. Adjourn. Do it.
Move to adjourn.
Do it.
We're going to take a brief recess.
Do it.
It's
Cause
done.
y'all not gonna disrespect me up here.
You're the one that just interrupted me.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
You tried to say I said, did I say based upon your years of service? Woo, Lord.
It's unfortunate. It's a beautiful morning until
Act grown up up here.
the headline.
Hopefully you could see that and hear that.
Yes, we could, Steve.
Okay. The man in the middle had the floor, and he was speaking, and the lady to his right, I guess, interrupted him and caused quite a disturbance. Even though she did not have the floor, she was not recognized to speak. And you can see how, if you don't follow your rules of procedure, how this can create problems. At one point during the discussion, one of the other council members asked for, I think it was a point of order. And we'll see later on in the presentation that that is one of the methods by which a member can raise an objection to what's going on at the time and ask the chair to return to the regular order of business for the day. There was also a motion to adjourn, which was not acted on, but the person in charge of the meeting, the man in the middle, did declare a recess in order to allow, I guess, tempers to cool down and then to come back to the orders of the day.
Steve, if you go back to your PowerPoint, we'll need to put that back up again.
Okay, let's
If you
see.
revert back.
I'm having trouble getting rid of that video, but can you let me see if I can reduce it there. Can you see that PowerPoint now?
No, not yet.
Uh-oh. Let me click here. I'm going to show the next video at this time, since we're in this video stage. This video, perhaps a little setup. This next video is entitled, I think, one of the most outrageous government board meetings ever. And this happened in Illinois. And a good friend of mine was the attorney at the board meeting at the time that this happened. And Jim kept his calm and kept trying to answer the questions that were posed to him. and to follow proper rules of procedure. But you can see that even where you have rules of procedure, if the body is not willing to follow them, then things can get out of hand. Kelly, can you see the video?
Yeah, it appears to be loading.
Okay. This video is a little longer, and it illustrates a situation where a member makes a motion to get an item on the floor for the group to debate and to act on, but the member who makes the motion does not receive a second for the motion, and things go downhill pretty quickly.
Next item, resolution determining trustee position vacant.
Guess I'll make that motion
Okay, motion made by trustee Ramirez-Lewinsky,
for discussion.
we're waiting for a second. Still waiting for a second.
You ought to know you're not going to get one.
It dies.
You already made your speech, and so we don't want to hear it again, to be real honest with you.
So it
So you're not going to get a second.
dies for lack of a second. It dies for,
I understand, trustee Seibelt.
well, how long are you gonna wait? I'm just asking a question. How long are you gonna wait?
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for a second. Still waiting for a second.
Attorney Rhodes, is there any time limit on how long you have to wait before a motion dies for lack of a second? Or are we gonna sit here till midnight?
There's no time limit. The board has the right to take a motion as it does in all other instances.
Okay, is there any procedure that we can do to end this?
And the waiting, you mean?
Yes. Yes, end the waiting and move on. I'm glad you think this is funny.
It is.
I don't think it's
Not
funny.
you. Yeah.
He's laughing too.
It's ridiculous is what it
He's
is.
laughing.
It's not funny, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, if the board determines that the time limit for making a motion is done, someone can make a motion to determine that there has been no second and move on to the
Okay.
next item.
I'll make that motion that there has been no second, ample time has been given, and it dies for lack of a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay,
Can I say something?
no, because there was no second.
They just had a second, so now
Well, they just,
On a motion to move forward, not on the original motion.
You can discuss the motion to move forward.
yeah.
Okay, I'll discuss the motion to move forward. I have to say, from all the emails I have received from many, many residents and phone calls I have received from many, many residents, that I am very disappointed in this board. That members of this board have attended many meetings talking about improving our image. And your lack of wanting to discuss this issue shows that you do not care about this community nor our image. As I have said, not only have I received emails and letters from residents in this community. I've received them from across the country. This is not setting a good example to our community. This is not setting a good example to any community. This is not what I want for our community. This is not why I ran for office. This is not the example I want to set for this community. And I'm ashamed of this board because you're saying this is acceptable behavior in our community. And as President Sardo said, you're very much saying this is a sanctuary city for abuse.
You know, I would just add to that, and you know,
Call the question.
we're not calling the question. We're talking about this this matter here because
Call the question.
He's got a right to call the question.
he's got a right to call the question. But I'm just saying that I also have a right to respond.
No, you don't have a right to do what's not legal. This has not been seconded.
What's
which
not
shouldn't be any
legal is what
discussion.
this board does every
There was no
every
second.
2 weeks.
There's
And-
no discussion.
There was a second.
There was a second to can this thing.
And move on.
Not to backdoor
That may have been
discuss
what
it.
your interpretation was of the second, but that's not what the second was.
Really? I did the
Yes.
seconding, and I seconded trustee Sigwald's motion to,
To move on.
die for a lack of a second, so we were moving on. So
Yes.
that's what the second was. The second was
And
not
we're
for
discussing,
and-
the lack of a second.
We had discussion by trustee Ramirez-Slawinski. We got our lecture. Now, trustee Humfer called the question. He has every right to call the question. And Robert's Rules of Order is when you call the question,
not-
there is no more discussion.
We're not
You call
operating
the
under
vote.
Robert's Rules of Order.
Oh, because it's convenient to you now.
No, because we have our own rules.
Wait. Trustee Sardo is correct. We don't operate under Robert's rules, but
President-
our
President
rules,
Sardo, thank you.
I'm sorry, President Sardo, but our rules do indicate that when you call the question, that issue's non-debatable.
Right. It ends
So you
discussion.
do have to, under your rules, call for the vote. The vote is to determine whether or not there's been sufficient debate on the issue of determining that there's been no second.
Thank you for the clarification, Attorney Rhodes. The question's been called.
That's just more of the same stuff. When they don't want to hear what other people have to say.
No
They
debate.
shut
We don't
off
want
the
debate,
debate.
do we,
It's
in
okay
this
when
town?
they do it, and
We
when
don't want
nobody
debate
else
in this
does
town.
it, it's okay.
Only when it suits certain people do we have debate in this town.
The question has been called.
Yeah, the question has been called, all right. The question is, why are you people sitting on this board? That's the question.
The question has been called. We need to take the vote.
No, the question is, why are you people sitting on this board? Who do you represent in this community? That's the question. Who do you represent?
I guess we're sitting on here to make sure you don't ramrod everything you want.
Ramrod?
Yes.
Ramrod?
Absolutely.
Ramrod?
Absolutely.
Trustee Ritter, you are, I hate to say this.
Thank you, Ed.
I really hate to say
Oh,
this.
you won't hate to say it. You'll love saying it. Go ahead, say it.
No,
Insult me.
I really hate to say this because you should be a person, especially a school teacher.
Right.
who
All right.
should be
Call my
who should-
employment into
who
question
should be
now.
concerned about the standards of this community.
Bill, I've listened to your lectures all night.
yeah, I
We've
know
spent
you've
an
listened to
hour
my
of tonight
lectures.
listening to you lecture.
I'm going to stop the video here. It goes on for another probably 5 minutes of personal attacks by the trustees against one another, and it gets pretty vicious. But just to comment on the rules of procedure, there was a motion made, and it would normally die for lack of a second, but the chair of the meeting did not pronounce that it died for a lack of a second. He waited for someone to second the original motion. And typically the chairman would say it dies for a lack of a second and move on to the next agenda item. In this case, he waited, so the other trustee wanted to know how to end the wait. And the parliamentarian, the attorney there, said, well, you can make a motion for the body to decide that it dies for lack of a second. and they made that motion. It received a second, and they started debating it. And you can see that as part of that debate, it started to become personal again. And one of the trustees called the question. And as part of the process, calling the question means you're simply asking that the body vote on the motion that's on the floor. And even though the question was called, they didn't vote for another 5 minutes, and there were a lot of personal attacks during the remaining 5 minutes of the video. When the chair should have called the question, had a vote on the matter, and moved forward. Let's see. I will see if I can get back to my slideshow. Can you see the slideshow or no?
No, I think you have to hit stop showing video. I don't know if you hit that up above under sharing.
Let's see. Okay, there we go.
There you go. Now you can put your PowerPoint back up. All right.
Now can you see that? Okay.
I can't see the PowerPoint yet.
Oh, you can't. Let's see.
There we go.
You can see it now?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. As I indicated, generally the presiding officer will enforce the rules of procedure. In the first video, the Detroit video, the chair, the gentleman in the middle, was trying to enforce the rules of procedure, and he was being interrupted as he was trying to do that, and he called for a recess. The presiding officer should always be fair and impartial in administering the rules. Oftentimes, the state's attorney will sit in at the county board meetings, and if the chair needs assistance with regard to rules of procedure, the state's attorney may be there to help the chair in enforcing those rules, interpreting the rules of procedure, and moving the body forward on any particular item. And in the second video, we saw where the village attorney kind of served that purpose in helping the legislators, the trustees, determine what was the appropriate action to take next, and what was the effect of any particular motion that was made. I'm going to flip to, let's see if I can, 22 and 23. These are from the McLean County board rules again. And your rules may be similar to this. The McLean County board rules show the general powers of the chair. The chair is obligated to conduct the meeting, and will have general powers to recognize members who are entitled to speak on any item, to put all questions to a vote, and to announce the results of those votes. And the McLean County Board rules provide that the state's attorney or the assistant state's attorney shall be in attendance at the meetings and act as parliamentarian for the board, and upon request give advice to the chair. And now I'd like to turn it over to Eugene. He's going to handle the next few slides with regard to meetings, agenda, open meetings act requirements, and what a typical meeting looks like. Eugene?
Thank you, Steve. One of the requirements under the Open Meetings Act is public meetings to have an agenda. The meeting agenda should typically contain the topics and items to be discussed and approved at the meeting by the public body. Additionally, the Open Meetings Act governs the preparation, posting, and processing requirements for an agenda. Some other notable Open Meetings Act requirements include that the agenda must be posted 48 hours in advance of the meeting. The agenda should adequately describe the items under consideration by the public body. The chair of the public body meeting must announce the items before they are considered. And the public body must also provide an opportunity for the public to present public comments at the meeting. At a typical meeting,
Eugene, let me show the McLean County rule on this particular item. Preparation of the agenda can sometimes create issues where some of the members may want something on the agenda, but typically it's the chair, the mayor, the head of the body that will be charged with preparing the agenda. And the McLean County Board rules indicate that the chair, in consultation with the administrator, shall prepare the agenda for each meeting.
Thank you, Steve. And at a typical meeting, the following things occur in substantially the following order. There's a call to order for the meeting. There's the Pledge of Allegiance, the moment of silence, an innovation. There's a roll call to determine whether a quorum is present. The public body approves the minutes for the meeting. There's reports of officers and committee reports. With respect to old business, there may be items carried over from a previous meeting, as well as new business. There are items to be debated and voted upon by the public body. Then there's an opportunity for a public comment for those in attendance concerning things discussed. There are also announcements, and then the adjournment of the meeting occurs. With respect to some key terms that parliamentary vocabulary that might be heard from time to time, I will discuss some of the more important terms. One of them is a motion, which is a means of presenting business before the assembly for discussion and action, typically signified by these magic words: I move that, and then following what the substance of the motion is. The next term is floor. Only one person from the public body may be recognized at a time. The person recognized by the chair is said to have the floor. Then there are subsidiary motions, which are these motions typically assist the assembly in disposing of a main motion. There are privilege motions, which are matters of immediate importance, unrelated to the pending motion. Incidental motions, in contrast, concern parliamentary situations that require action before business can proceed. The term majority typically means more than half of those present. This may also be more than half of all members of the assembly. And lastly, a supermajority signifies a vote requirement by rule, statute that requires more than a majority approval, more than 50%. Typically 2/3 of a vote, or sometimes 3/4 for some zoning or property matters. And with respect to handling a motion, a main motion, here are some of the procedures that you'll need to know. The member is recognized by the chair. The member then states the motion. Then the chair recognizes a member for the purposes of seconding the motion. Then the maker of the motion has the floor to debate and discuss the motion. Next, the chair will recognize other members for purposes of debate. More information will be discussed about this presented shortly about the topic and the rules for debate discussion. Then the chair may end the debate and call a vote on the motion if all debate is concluded, or if a member may call for the previous question. And then the clerk calls roll for vote, and the chair announces the results of the vote.
Thank you, Eugene. Moving on to rules of debate. As Eugene indicated, and as we saw in one of the videos, you have to have the floor in order to make a motion, and in this regard, you have to be recognized by the chair, and the chair is supposed to be impartial. So he or she should recognize speakers as they rise in order to be recognized and have the floor. Typically, under Robert's rules, the maker of the motion will speak first, assuming the motion was seconded and it's on the floor. And when members debate a motion, this varies from organization to organization, but the rules, and you see this oftentimes if you watch C-SPAN, you see it in the Senate and the House. The debate is always made to the chair. In the Senate, they're always talking to the president, who is the president of the Senate. And the chair of the legislative session, and the speaker is members are supposed to address their comments regarding any particular motion to the chair, and speakers are to confine their comments to the merits of the motion. Speakers should avoid personal attacks or questioning the motives of other members or calling out other members by name, in order to maintain civility and decorum during the debate process. Robert's rules indicates debate must be confined to the merits of the pending question. Speakers must address their remarks to the chair, maintain a courteous tone, and especially in reference to any divergence of opinion, should avoid injecting a personal note into the debate. To this end, they must never attack or make any allusion to the motives of members. And as already noted, speakers should refer to officers only by title and should avoid the mention of other members' names as much as possible. Now, every body is every legislative body is different. Some are very informal, small villages. You know, everybody knows everybody, and they've worked with one another, and they're on first name basis with everyone. So it kind of depends on the forum. But this is kind of the ideal, where personal references and remarks are not part of the debate process. Amendments may be made at any time once a member is recognized by the chair, and this is helpful for people who may have minority points of view on a particular item. They may offer an amendment to the motion, and these amendments again require a second, and then the amendment is debated and put to a vote to determine whether or not the main motion is to be amended. And if the person is in the majority, of course, the majority would approve that particular amendment. But the amendment process provides an avenue for people with minority views to express their opinions with regard to any particular item that's on the agenda. Some groups will set a time limit for speaking. That's not unusual. You know, a member may speak for 3 minutes or 5 minutes regarding a motion and may only speak one time. Or it may be less formal than that, and the chair may allow, you know, as many members to speak as often as they like, but that does create some inefficiency and can lead to prolonged meetings. Oops, there we are. Typically, the chair will kind of gauge whether or not everyone's had an opportunity to state their opinion with regard to an item, and then put the issue to a vote of the assembly. Or any member, as we saw in the video, any member can call the previous question, and that is not debatable, and that will require a vote on the pending motion at that time. Typically, if you have a limit on debate, it can only be extended or shortened by a supermajority vote of 2/3 of the assembly, or by unanimous consent where the chair orders it and no one objects. For your information, there are slides that show rules from McLean County Board again. Slide number 29 here incorporates their rule as to when a member may speak. First have to be recognized by the chair. No person may speak more than once, nor more than 5 minutes on the same matter without permission of the chair. And then there's also an issue about you know, having the vote. And McLean County has particular board rules on how votes are conducted, and you may have this in your legislative body as well. Certain votes require a roll call vote. These are typically appropriation or tax levy ordinances, the expenditure of money, those sorts of things. And you may also have rules on how votes are taken, the procedure of votes. You know, what order are names called? McLean County has a rule that names are called in alphabetical order. However, you pick up where you last left off at the last meeting. So if Jones was the first name called at the last time you had a vote, and the next month you have another meeting, then the next person alphabetically after Jones would be the first person called in that case. McLean County also has a rule with regard to members who do not vote, because that, in this case, they said that they will be presumed absent. And sometimes trying to decide whether or not a majority of the members present voted in favor of a particular motion may come down to whether or not you vote you count the member who chose not to vote, you know, pass. And McLean County Board rules provide that member's pass or refusal to vote is not counted for purposes of determining a majority. Okay, amendments to the main motion, as we indicated, may be made at any time during the debate. And these amendments can completely negate the original motion or simply modify it in some way. Amendments require a second, and those amendments are debatable and must be approved by a majority of the body. As Eugene indicated, there are other motions that members may use and that are provided for in Robert's Rules of Order and in most parliamentary rules of procedure. These are privileged motions, subsidiary motions, and incidental motions. A privileged motion is something like a motion to adjourn or a motion to recess. These motions take priority over any pending motion. You can call for the orders of the day, and we saw that, I think, in the Detroit Assembly. There was a call for the orders of the day when things were getting out of hand. And then eventually there was a motion to adjourn or a motion to recess that took priority over the pending matter. You may also raise a point of personal privilege if you know this is sometimes used by members who may need to tend to personal matters. They don't want to miss any of the debate. They may raise a point of personal privilege, asking that things be deferred or recessed for them in order to take care of personal business. Subsidiary motions have the effect of, oftentimes have the effect of deferring a matter or amending a matter. These deal directly with the main motion. Excuse me. Some of these include a motion to put the matter on the table, to lay the matter on the table. We saw the motion for to take a vote. That's kind of a can be considered subsidiary or privileged. Postpone a matter to a definite time, postpone indefinitely, amend a matter, or refer a matter to a committee. These are all standard subsidiary motions. Eugene, you want to pick up here? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Then there are incidental motions. As I described earlier, an incidental motion concerns parliamentary situations that require action before business can proceed. A few examples of those situations include appealing the decision of the chair, a circumstance where there's a division of the assembly which requires a roll call vote or show of hands, or a situation where there's a division of the question which requires separation of the motion for vote, or a situation where there's a point of order, in which case the chair is required to decide, or in the situation where there's a motion to suspend the rules, in which case a supermajority 2/3 vote is required. During a meeting, there are also several forms of voting. One of them is a voice vote, the most common way to vote. Normally, there are rules regarding remote participation that can complicate how voices are heard because people may be speaking over one another, but nonetheless, it's the most common way to vote. Then there is a show of hands method. There's also the roll call method. And there is the unanimous vote by the order of the chair, which is similar to unanimous consent. For motions that bring a question again before the assembly, the motion must be taken from the table, and then it must be reconsidered. This motion is typically made by the person on the prevailing side. There's also a motion to adjourn. This is one of the privileged motions that Steve discussed a moment ago. This motion can be made at any time during the meeting. The motion to adjourn requires a second and also must be approved by a majority vote of the assembly. Thank you, Steve. Back to you.
Thank you, Eugene. And I think that brings us to our adjournment as well. we're happy to answer any questions. I don't know if anything's come up in the chat window. Maybe we can look in there to see if we have any questions, or if you want to pose any questions now. Eugene and I are available for to try to address those concerns. We appreciate an opportunity to speak with you today, and if you have any questions in the future, you can contact either one of us here at the contact information on the screen. And you're also welcome to go to the Ancel Glink website. It is loaded with resources for governmental officials. And this particular presentation will be posted at our website in the future, perhaps later on this week, if you want to take an opportunity to look at the notes again. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions for Eugene or Steve at this time? I think the only question regarding the guidelines to provide to board members, the packets to the agenda prior to the meeting or subcommittee, are there any guidelines as to how those should be handled?
It's not uncommon for the board to have a rule on the delivery of packets. Typically, the agenda has to be out and posted in order to comply with the Open Meetings Act at least 48 hours in advance. And I know most administrators try to get their agenda and their packet out earlier than that, more than 48 hours in advance of the meeting. But the 48 hours is the minimum, and most people try to get it out earlier than that. And the packet of information should go to the board members, you know, at the same time the agenda is posted or earlier. You might check your own local board rule on that particular issue.
Okay. Thank you. We also had a question from one of our county board chairs is, how do you deal with disruptive members that follow the rules?
Yes.
I'm assuming he has dealt with this.
That's a thorn in your side. Yeah, I was a member of a legislative body many years ago where we had a member who knew Robert's Rules of Order inside and out, and he was very effective at disrupting the flow of business through the use of the rules.
Oh wait, so, he just corrected it. He says that don't follow the rules. So I'm sorry.
Oh, they don't. Okay.
Typed in the word.
If they're following the rules, it makes it much more difficult.
Right. So how do you deal with disruptive members that don't follow the rules? Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. Well, you know, all you can do is I mean, you, like we saw in the videos, you can, if it gets really out of hand, you can take a recess and, you know, talk to the member behind the scenes, and try to encourage them to follow the rules. You know, if the behind the scenes suggestions and discussions doesn't seem to get through, doesn't help the situation, I mean, you just have to rule the member out of order and try to control the meeting as best you can. The meeting is controlled by the chair and by the majority. It's not controlled by the minority or any one particular member. So you do have that authority to move forward. And then finally, you know, if you do have the body has the ability to censure the member. You know, I've seen that happen where a particular member is engaged in disruptive behavior, and a resolution of censure is introduced. But you know, that's at a point where things get pretty extreme, and hopefully you would not have to take things that far. Hopefully it could be resolved through some friendly conversation, perhaps through through the state's attorney's office to help with that situation.
Okay.
Eugene,
Thank
do you have
you.
any ideas?
I don't, Steve. You summarized that very eloquently.
All right.
Thank you, Steve. We have a couple more questions. Are there any legal requirements for committee makeup? Number of members from each aisle?
Well, typically, I don't know that there are legal requirements, but there may be board requirements. There are some legal requirements. You'd have to check your statute, and it would depend on what committee or board that you're dealing with. I do know the county code does have some legal requirements with regard to political party membership on certain boards and commissions. Right offhand, I don't have those to be able to speak to which ones in particular, but I do know that in some cases there are statutory requirements. There may also be board rules that address that issue. There may just be tradition and practice. We run into that a lot of times where it's not necessarily written down, but they've been doing it this way for 50 years, as long as anyone can remember, and we've always had so many Republicans or so many Democrats on this particular committee. So it depends on the board. I think it's common practice to try to share governance as much as possible with the minority party to provide some participation. As we indicated, Robert's quote from 1870, it's important to keep minority members involved and engaged. And that's part of the parliamentary process.
Okay, and this kind of lends to that. It might be the final question, but any obligation to have the vice chair be of the minority party?
I don't know that there's a legal obligation. There may be tradition and practice.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions for our presenters today for Eugene or Steve? Okay, if not, then I want to thank our presenters, and again, they will be available. You have their contact information if you have any follow-up questions regarding the presentation today. I would also like to reiterate what Steve said. We will be making the video available through access through Ancel Glink, and hopefully we may have that up tomorrow, but we'll provide that to you as participants. We do know there were several members and newly elected officials who could not attend today. So if you get access to that, they may be something that you can share with them, and also move them to the site that will be posted on with Ancel Glink or that avenue. Again, we want to thank you all. We know this is a little different than the in-person, but again, I think we did address the basics today. I think our presenters did an excellent job covering all the aspects that we usually do in person. It's just a little shortened agenda, but again, they are available. So we will be having a second training. I believe that's going to be on the 29th. So registration for that is available on our website. And we will likely be circling back with our partnership here with Ancel Glink as one of our associates for maybe some potential topics moving forward later in the year as well. And that could go beyond just newly elected official training, but in other aspects of just the governing of our counties as a whole. So thank you both for presenting to us today, and thank you all for your attendance, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.